All right, guys. Super excited for today's show. Chip Bell, welcome to the CX Chronicles Podcast.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. Always delighted to be with you. Thank you. Thank you. We
So,
always have fun.
Absolutely. No, so guys, Chip Bell is going to, number one, have a ton of awesome stories and wisdom and different points for us to think about. Chip, you've been helping people think about how to manage their customers and helping people think about how to improve the way that they can take care of one of the most important parts of their business for many years now, my friend.
Absolutely. More than I care to remember. But I've had it. But it's been fun. It's been a great ride, and I'm counting on long more times.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Why don't you start off? Why don't you take a couple minutes, Chip? Why don't you tell the CX Nation your story? Give them an idea of how you got to where you are today, and give them a sense for the journey that you've been on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've always been interested in the customer, and I'm particularly interested in why people buy and what builds loyalty. And studied it in graduate school and all that kind of stuff. Worked for a couple of organizations and started on my own company 40 years ago. So I'm still learning, still trying to figure it out. The thing that I love most to talk about and help organizations with is around what I call innovative service. And it comes from the concept that, well, most companies know they're supposed to exceed their customers' expectations, but how most of them tend to approach that is sort of linearly. They like to value added. Let's take what the customer expects and add more.
Yep.
My focus is on value unique, because I figure if you just add value, you're going to run out of room.
Yeah.
Your customers' expectations are going to climb right along there with each edition.
That's right.
And it get right pricey.
Yeah, so, very quickly. Yeah.
But the value unique side is looking at it from an innovative way. So it's not just trying to be generous. It's trying to be ingenious in how you serve your customers. So that's a whole fun area to me, is that whole bringing a sense of creativity around the experiences you create.
Yep. And I think, Chip, you're going to, now more than ever too, right? Post-COVID, we're going to have businesses across the world. They're going to have to literally think about every little facet, every little step, and they're going to have to get pretty meticulous with the way that they make sure that they can keep folks coming back, because it's going to be a little bit harder. The next couple of years is going to be different type of situation for most businesses.
It is. It's absolutely. And what we want is not just have them come back. We want them to bring their buddies.
That's right. Exactly.
We want to create a sense of advocacy. We want fans. We don't want just retained customers.
Big time. 100%. Makes it a lot more fun to run a business that way too.
Oh yeah. When they're out there selling on your behalf, it's always good.
Big time. Chip, we talked through many of these episodes. We talked through the 4 CX pillars: team, tools, process, and feedback. I'd love for you to take a couple minutes, talk with us a little bit about some of the work that you've done with all these different teams during your journey and during your career.
Well, I have worked with some really fascinating organizations, from Harley Davidson to Ritz-Carlton. I mean, that's pretty runs the gamut right there.
Absolutely, 100%.
So one of the most fascinating assignments I had was working with the Ritz-Carlton. They have a system they now call Mystique, but it's all about a system to help personalize your experience. And so, for example, if you ordered a fruit plate and you don't like kiwi, and so you left kiwi on the plate, and then you ordered it again, and you left it on the plate. Well, the third time you ordered that fruit plate, it wouldn't have any kiwi.
It's done.
It's now in your profile that you don't like kiwi because you didn't touch it the last 2 times. But the most interesting part is it's not only in your profile in New York City, Ritz-Carlton there on Fifth Avenue at Central Park. It's also in the one in Moscow.
Right.
And in the one in Panama and wherever.
Yep.
And so to me, but the thing they were interested in is, we love personalization, but then there's a side to it where you go, where are the cameras,
Big brother.
Kind of gets a weird feeling about it.
Yeah.
So we like personalization, but we don't want our privacy invaded. So I work with them around how to find that balance between, I don't want it weird, but I want it personalized. And I found, for example, in our work, we found that the sense of what is private is different by different regions of the country, different regions of the world. So people in the Northeast might have a closer sense of privacy and might not be as open as people might be where I live, who talk like I did, might have a wider berth for what they consider to be okay for an organization to know. But anyway, that's fascinating stuff like that. I've had some great fun assignments. So, right,
I
lots
love
of
it. I
different
love it.
companies.
I got a follow-up question for there. When you
Yeah.
talk about some of the most entertaining or some of the most fun assignments that you've had, what's one of the main ones that kind of rises to the cream of the top, or to the top of the pack that you could think about or that you could share with us?
Well, one of the things is working in the gaming community. Obviously, particularly the casino world.
Okay.
I did a lot of work with Caesars, Caesars Palace, Caesars World. They've got a variety of locations from Lake Tahoe to,
Sure.
at one time, Atlantic City. At any rate, but working with their gaming side, how do you? Obviously, they want to make money, but how do you help the frontline in person know that our goal is not to take every dime the customer has, even though you could. The goal is to create a great experience so they'll come back. And
Yep.
so how do you manage the protocols around saying, this might be a good time to not keep playing, or, this might be a time to cut you off. And how do you do that in a way that's diplomatic, that demonstrates you care about the customer? So setting those protocols where you want the house to do well, obviously, that's you're a business.
Yep.
You also want that customer to come back. In
Big
the
time.
olden days of the Las Vegas Strip, whether you came back or not was irrelevant to them. They wanted to take every dime you had.
Yeah, if you had a big week, you could have a big weekend on a customer. So be
That's
it.
right. That's right. And now they've begun to realize that the money in the customer is not about this trip; it's about all the trips in the future. And
Lifetime
if they have
value.
a great experience in the casino,
Yep.
they may lose some money, but they're going to still keep coming back because they know they got treated fairly, diplomatically, and
Yep.
kindly.
Yep. Big time. It's that LTV, Chip. It's like
Yeah.
It's like the companies that understand this day and age. If you can, you're going to make $100 a year on a customer, and all you got to do is give $10 back to make sure that you keep that happening. Do
Absolutely.
it. Get it done. And then on top of it, you're right. This day and age, I think that some of the leading companies in the world, they've just set a certain bar, a certain precedent to a place where customers expect. There's an expectation, and it is a fine line. You can't let customers take advantage of you. You are in business to make a profit, and
sure.
But that's awesome.
We we try to help organizations recognize, the customer's sometimes dead wrong. It's not, we don't believe the customer's always right, because we're all customers. We're sometimes wrong.
100%.
Our goal is to help the customer feel right.
Yeah.
That's a different objective.
Totally different story. Yep. Chip, I'd love to move into the second CX pillar of tools. You mentioned some of the client work that you were doing in terms of just cataloging or tracking what customers preferred or what their preferences were, or how you could personalize their experience of the brand. Are there any stories, or is there any experiences that you've had working with clients that you want to spend a couple minutes talking about that really stood out to you around tools? Something that either made you just super impressed with the way that they did it, or just an idea that you could give the listener around things that they need to be thinking about when they're expanding their own toolkits within their business.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think the bottom line I want to leave your listeners with is to start with the customer, start with what matters to them. I used to do a lot of work with Victoria's Secret.
Okay.
I work both with Victoria's Secret catalog and Victoria's Secret stores.
That's not a bad client to have.
Not a bad client. I tell you what, that's really enjoyable. But at any rate, but they would do. We worked with a particular catalog around what we call layered group listening, and what it involved is a focus group with a group of customers that had made a purchase within the last few months, or a return within the last few months. So it's a fresh experience. And you would bring in the senior leadership team, and they would sit around the edge, and they would and a group of frontline employees, and they would listen to this focus group right there in the room, big room, to the customer talk, and they would talk about their experiences and what they had, and then they could take questions from the frontline, open it up for the frontline, and then the customers would leave. The frontline would move to the table from the outside. And then they would have a focus group about what they heard from the customer and their reaction to it. And then leaders, including the CEO, listen to their response. And then together they've problem solved around, while the customer got a tour of the center in Cincinnati. They got a chance to or in Columbus, Ohio, where they're headquartered. They got the chance to say, okay, what we hear, what can we do differently? And what they did was they said, let's build our tools around what we heard our customers say were important. And let's make sure that we ensure that we focus on what drives loyalty. Now, that's a real important point, Adrian. We all know we're supposed to focus on what's important.
Yep.
But well, I would suggest you build metrics and build tools around measuring what drives loyalty. Here's an example. If you ask customers, what's the most important thing on a airline flight? They're going to tell you safety. Absolutely.
Yep.
That's going to be
get me up, get me down.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you ask customers, so it's got to be something you pay attention to. You crash a few planes, you're going to be out of business. But if you ask those same customers what features cause them to pick airline A over airline B, safety won't be in the top 10.
Right.
So now I want to pay attention to what I call table stakes, the things like safety. I need to pay attention to that. But I want my metrics to be built around what drives loyalty. And so that's a whole different frame, which may be different than what they say is most important.
Yep.
So that'd be what and let the customer determine that. Ask the customer, what makes you pick A over B?
Yeah, I think that's super important. I think that, with some of the different folks that we've had on the show recently, Chip, that are in more of these really highly tech focused types of spaces, some of the metrics that they're getting into are wild, right? They're getting into customer. It's not just your run of the mill, your NPS or your CSAT. They're getting into product scoring. They're getting into user scoring. They're getting into platform scoring. And it's like, you can go deep on this stuff, but the reason why they're doing it, and it gets completely stuck to what you just said there, sir. It's about the loyalty and the engagement piece. They're trying to measure loyalty and engagement.
I used to use a quote that I used to use all the time. It says, even if you could genetically engineer a 6 Sigma goat, if you are a rodeo, your customers are probably going to prefer a 4 Sigma horse.
Yeah, right. Exactly. 100%.
So what matters to that customer? We can measure all day long the wrong things.
Yep.
Things that in the eyes of the customer are not particularly important. So
that's right. Nope, that's
absolutely
what
Victoria's Secret learned when they got those focus groups. They go, we need to measure these things, but like call handle time. What they learned is that why are we making call handle time one of our metrics that we pay attention to and talk about it to the frontline person? Because that means I'm going to speed up and get better at call handle time.
Sure.
May mean the customer's going to have to call back because I'm not paying any attention to first call resolution. Well, there's an example of, are we measuring the right? Sure, we want to keep metrics on that because it helps us with staffing, but I need to make sure that when I'm on the front line, I take as much time as I need to solve the customer's problem and don't worry about, quote, call handle time. If you want that to be different, you need to coach it, not measure it for the
big time. And you're right. It's funny because that's become an interesting call center metric that a lot of people feel how you just explained it now, where they would have used to look at your call rates and wanted a low number to be able to bang more calls out. Now it's like, wait a minute, if I have a customer who actually wants to talk to one of my reps for 15 or 20 minutes and my rep is good enough to keep it. I mean, people are busy. If they're going to take 15 or 20 minutes talking to the rep, either they really are enjoying that experience of walking through it, or it's taking a while to fix the problem. But no, that's a huge one. You're building relationships, and then it's more of a much firmer type of medium in terms of being able to.
It's all about pay me now or pay me later. So
big time.
It'll cost me more if they keep calling back than if I can take care of it in one call. Right.
Yep. Chip, I'd love to move on to the third pillar of process. I got to imagine, I know when we were talking the other day, you gave me a bunch of different stories just around some of the things that you've seen around process over the years.
Right.
And what are a couple of, if you could give a couple areas of advice or a couple key stories around how people can think about why process is so important to inject into their business, especially with their customer facing teams, the people that have to talk to the customer every single day. Can you spend a couple minutes talking about process?
Sure. And process to me is a methodology by which we bring a sense of consistency, and it's a way of bringing discipline. to what we do and how we're delivering an experience to a customer. And that's important, and that's very valuable. What's also important is we say, are we making sure that we are paying attention to the qualitative side, not just the quantitative side when it comes to processes. One process that we're all familiar with is scripting.
Yep.
The whole "thank you for shopping at J-Mart" or "would you like fries with that?" And it sounds just like a script.
Yep.
And most organizations I work with that are renowned at what they do have moved away from a script and said, these are the elements that we need in a greeting. These
Sure.
are the elements that we need in how you handle this. You do it in your own style, in your own way, as opposed to reading a script that sounds, unless you're a great actress or a great actor, they're going to sound like a script. They're going to sound like mechanical.
Yep.
The other one that we look at a lot of times is congruence between a process and your culture or your values. For example, we all are familiar with the most interesting one, which is, your call is very important to us. Your wait time's 30 minutes. And that dissonance right there. Your call time is real important. That's one of our values. We want to make sure, and your wait time's 30 minutes, and you don't see the disconnect between these.
Yeah, right. There's some friction there.
Yeah. When we talk, when I work with the Ritz-Carlton, we want to make sure that what processes we have are executed in the style that fits our tradition, our culture, and our values. And so I think bringing that value-based approach into the processes we create keeps them from being just mechanical actions that ensure consistency, but don't do a whole lot for the sense of worth on the part of the customer. So,
yeah. Yep. I like that. Chip, the other thing too I like about that is when any company takes the time to talk about the mission or the value parts of it, it allows their employees to be able to understand sort of the North Star view. And then if you sort of at least know directionally which path you're being asked to walk in and to walk customers in, then you can start to have fun with it and you can make it your own. And going back to your example where you're just putting snippets in instead of a full-blown script this day and age.
Right.
Once again, then like whether or not you're running let's say that you're a brand that's in every major city in the US, then if you've got the major variables that you want the theme to add, but you're in Philadelphia and you can add your Philly local flavor, but you're hitting the major variables versus maybe your store top that's in Los Angeles. Right. You can talk, it makes it so that again, personalization. That's really, really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even you won't find malt vinegar on the tables at the McDonald's here, but you sure will in the UK.
Right. Yeah.
So you've got to give the local areas some flexibility about how they administer and develop those processes so it fits that. Again, we're back to what works for that audience, what works for that customer. And so making sure we manage it in a way that is appropriate to that culture as well, that environment.
Absolutely. Before we move on from process, Chip, I got to ask you, was there any one story or any one example of really incredible process optimization that you've seen along your journey? Was there one that sticks out around where you saw a company change it?
Not one recently. I did one I love to talk about sometimes is a liquor store.
Okay.
Adrian, I don't go to this liquor store very often, but I do go, but not very often. But when the COVID hit, this is a guy who owns a liquor store in the middle of a mall, so he doesn't have a drive. He can't have a drive-through. It's just physically not doable. It's in the middle of the mall. But what he did was he didn't want people wandering in his store and getting crowded and all that. So he moved. He physically changed the whole process. And he put a table outside on the sidewalk, and you go up to the table, and everybody's wearing a mask. And if you don't have a mask, they'll give you one.
Yep.
And the person has gloves on who says, "You give us your credit card and you order. We'll go in the store and fill your order and bring it back out."
Love it.
You don't go to the store. Well, there's a very simple process.
Yep.
And he's the same guy. He's not only a liquor store, but he has a humidor that has these real high-end cigars. And so he took the cigar boxes and made them like a suggestion box all over the store. So wherever you were in the store, there'd be a cigar box that says, "Tell us your ideas about how we get better." Okay. There's trying to get feedback from the customer.
Totally.
But then when you left, out of the store when you were allowed in the store before COVID. He had a big bulletin board on there that says, here's what somebody asked for and here's what we're doing about it. And so
Love
people
that.
realize, my idea, maybe not my idea, but somebody's ideas, he's listening to what matters to the customer. So it's a real simple way to get feedback from the customer that says to the customer, and your input matters. It's important.
Big time. You're literally, you're going to optimize and you're going to improve and you're going to evolve your business on the spot based off of what the customer has to say. That is a perfect segue, sir, for the fourth and final pillar. And I was excited to talk with you about this feedback. So
yeah,
I don't need, it stands for itself. I'd love for you just to spend a couple minutes to talk about either some of the major areas where you've seen some of these, because you worked at some awesome companies, Chip.
I have.
And I got to imagine you've seen some pretty creative ways of, you just mentioned one of them, but spend a couple minutes talking about feedback. What are some of the ways you've seen this run really well?
Yeah, I've seen some really unique and unusual. One of the most impressive ones to me is Stu Leonard's. Now, Stu Leonard's up there in New England.
Oh, yeah.
Stu Leonard's Dairy is huge store. At one time, it had in the Guinness Book of World Records as having the highest income per square foot of any grocery in the world.
Wow.
So they're huge, and but they have big suggestion boxes, and they did the same technique that my good friend Matt did in the liquor store. People have been trained suggestion boxes don't work, but his would be filled to capacity every day.
Wow.
Because they would take them out every day and they'd make copies of them, distribute them all around and give meet about it. They'd have up on the bulletin board, this is what you asked for, this is what we've done. And I think the key to me, any feedback loop is, do your customers know what you did with the feedback you gave them?
That's right. Yep.
And we know from research, 95% of companies get feedback from their customers, but only 10% do something with it, and only 5% let the customer know what they did with. And you wonder why they don't complete a survey.
Wow.
It's because, why should I? I don't see any evidence.
Yep.
It may not be your evidence, but I don't see any evidence that feedback has made any difference. I always tell people, when you look for feedback, make sure, is it engaging? Meaning, is it educational, or is it fun, or is it interesting? Is whatever device you have to get feedback, is it engaging to the customer? Is it simple and easy to do? So for the customer, I make it as simple as I can. Does it have one specific goal, getting feedback, and not multiple goals and trying to get a 25 questionnaire to solve everybody's thing and answer about everything?
Yep.
And does it matter? Meaning, does the customer see evidence that it made a difference? And so if you apply those 4 features to any feedback program, process, or tool, you usually find it will work. And so, again, looking for ways to make sure those elements are built into it. It's got to be engaging. It's got to be easy. It's got to be something that is one purpose and not multiple.
Yep.
Finally, it needs to be valued. I need to see it as making a difference as a customer.
Big time. I couldn't agree more with everything you said there, Chip. One thing that I've seen in my experience, for example, just to give the listeners some ideas on how far you can take this stuff, but I've worked in many companies where if you see any type of detractor-based commentary or survey feedback come through the lines, somebody is picking up the telephone and calling that customer on the spot, just to literally, because if they're going out of their way to tell you that you're a 0 to a 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If the customer is really valuable to your business,
you call them.
Yeah. Call them right away. Hey, what happened? What do we need to do?
Yeah.
Why are you feeling this way?
Right.
And so that's one example. I think the other example too, and you nailed this, man, is let them know, hey, not only did we get your feedback, but here's how we process that feedback, and here's when you can expect to see something. And even, Chip, I've worked with a lot of businesses doing this piece. Even if you're maybe just you're putting it out there and you're letting them know that that's what your process is, it's still better than nothing.
You bet. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. One of the best I've seen is my dry cleaner has a little notepad and it says suggestions from the boss. Customer is the boss.
That's good. I like that.
So when you come in, they're going to say, what's one thing we can do to improve our service to you?
Yeah.
And here's what Scott will do. He'll say, I'll say, well, Scott, I don't know of anything. Well, just make something up so I can write it down. Because what he's learned is when he says that, and I ask him about it obviously all the time, and I said, when you say to somebody, well, just make something up, he said, you'd be amazed how many people go, well, now that I think about it, how about this?
Yeah, you're forcing them to think about it.
Yeah, and then he writes down, it's just a steno pad, just like you can get anywhere, steno pad, but he's got printed up at the top of it, suggestions from, quote, the boss. That'd be the customer. So
I like that. I like that a lot.
Simple, look for simple ways. Simple works a whole lot better than complex. We know that.
Big time. What about the employee side, Chip? What have you seen done really, really creatively by certain businesses on their teams, the people that work with the customers every single day? What have you seen that's worked really good for employee-based feedback?
Well, I think one of the best examples I can think of is Marriott's Gold Star. Now, they don't use the Gold Star program in all the properties, but some of the properties use it. The Gold Star program works like this. They, when you check into a particular hotel, they'll give you a Gold Star, and it's in a little brochure that tells you about the program. And the instructions are, it's like a coin, and they say, when you see something really out of the ordinary, really great that you think needs to be affirmed, give that coin to that employee. Well, then what happens is the employee then picks out some back of the house person who helped them deliver that service, and they pass that coin to them. And then at the next meeting, both of them get recognized.
That's very cool.
So it's tying the front of the house, who's obviously going to get a lot more gold coins, if you will,
totally,
to the back of the house. So they work as a team, reinforcing that celebration, affirmation, and teamwork. And so
I love it.
Those are the kind of things. That's one of the most unique ones I've seen.
I like that, front of house, back of house, and sharing a little bit of the magic, sharing a little bit of the good that's coming from it. That's a great example. Chip, as we wind down today's show, my friend, I want to make sure I give you a couple minutes to let the CX Nation know, where can they learn more about you, sir, and where can they find you?
Good. Well, the answer is the same thing. You can learn more about me on chipbell.com. That's a website address I can remember. Right. There's a lot of stuff there, a lot of tools there, a lot of stuff about my new book that just was #1 on the bestseller list last week.
Nice.
For new releases,
Where can people find the book, Chip?
Anywhere. You go anywhere books are sold, you'll find inside. I got one right here. Inside Your Customer's Imagination.
Nice.
Again, you can find it in any bookstore or there it goes. You can see it a little bit better. Inside Your Customer's Imagination. Any bookstore or any online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Porchlight Books, wherever you order books, it'll be there. So
Love it. Well, Chip, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the CXChronicles podcast.
You bet. Thanks, Adrian.
You have a great day, Chip.
You too. Thank you, sir.